Hello everyone, and welcome to this next episode of Coding with Dom. Today we're making a Windows Form app in the .NET Framework in Visual C#. Using Visual Studio Community Edition, which is free to use, and you can find it at the link below. Okay, now let's get started. We're going to go click File, New, Project. In this panel, go down to Visual C#, make sure it's selected on Windows Desktop. Then go ahead and click Windows Form App. .NET Framework, make sure in the right panel it says Visual C#. For the name, we're going to go ahead and write Math Calculator. For the location, we're going to put in our C drive, Projects, C#. Make sure Create Directory for Solutions checked, and Add to Source Controls checked as well. For the framework, I'm doing .NET Framework 4.6.1. Your mileage may vary. Go ahead and click OK when you're finished. Now Visual Studio has created our first project. Now in order to run our project, just go up here and click the Start button. And as you can see here, this is our application, although there's nothing in it. Let's go ahead and hit Stop Debugging. Now we're going to start designing our application. We're going to go over to this form, right-click, Properties. On this right-hand side, we see the Properties window. Go down to Text. Right now it says Form 1 and matches the title of the form, Form 1. We're going to make this a little bit more user-friendly. Highlight everything and then type in Math Calculator. Click Enter. Now our form says Math Calculator instead of Form 1. Click Start. Let's see it in action. There we go. A little bit more user-friendly to start. Let's go ahead and change another property. For example, right now the back colors is gray, but let's say we want to spice up our application a little bit more and make it a little bit more vibrant. We go ahead and go to the back color property and change the value of the property. Right now it's the control color. Let's go ahead and change this to something a little bit more interesting. Let's go to Custom, and let's make it this nice bright orange, light orange, yeah. See, now that's a lot better. Great. You can go ahead and look and research into the rest of these properties and find out what they all do. So we have a good application so far, but it's a little empty. So let's go ahead and add some controls from the toolbox. So to open up the toolbox, we can do Control-Alt-X. Another way to open up the toolbox is we go to View, and then we go down over here to the toolbox. So let's start by adding some labels. Just go up to the search box and type in label. Let's go ahead and just click and drag those labels over. Put some 3 labels on there, maybe some text boxes as well. Just go type in text box. We'll drag 2 of those over. And last but not least, let's go ahead and put a button in. And we're going to go ahead and drag a button over. Great. Now on our form, let's go ahead and rearrange the controls in the way that we want it. You can do this by clicking and dragging things over. And we can even shrink the form a little bit. Move all our controls to the top left. And there we go. So now that we got the controls rearranged, let's go ahead and add some text to these controls. So instead of saying label 1, we're going to change this to the plus symbol. And instead of saying label 2, we're going to change this to the equal symbol. And for this one, instead of saying button 1, we're going to change this to the word calculate. I'm going to stretch this button out a little bit more so we can actually read it. There we go. And for this one, we're going to start it off with nothing at all. Okay, great. We're going to realign these really quick. Awesome. After a little bit more rearrangement, I think we have a nice design. Now, this is important. For the controls that we will be interacting with on the back end, we have to give them some special names. So we're going to go ahead and right click on this control, properties, go all the way to the top to name, and we're going to change this to input 1. Similar thing over here, we're going to change this to input 2. Over here, the calculate button, we're going to change this to, instead of button 1, we're going to call it button calculate. And over here, this last label, we're going to call this answer. Now that we have all of our controls named properly, let's go ahead and add an action to a control. So for the calculate button, we're going to go ahead and click this. Right now we're under properties. Let's go to events. We're going to go add an action to the click event. For this, we're going to go ahead and hit the drop down and double click this. Now what this just did is took us to the back end and created a button calculate underscore click method that is mapped to the click event for actually clicking the calculate button. So once again, if a user clicks the calculate button, it's going to run our code here in the back end. Let's go add a simple hello world here just so we know what's going on. We're going to type in message box dot show empty parentheses with a semicolon after it. And then inside of the empty quotations, we're going to write hello world, exclamation point. We're going to hit the start button. So now when we click the calculate button, it's going to say hello world in the message box dialog box. Great, but that's not what we want. So we're going to go ahead and delete that. It's just great to see a nice hello world working in our application. Now let's go ahead and start actually coding our application. We're going to write var number1 equals int.parse input1.text. At the end, we're going to put a semicolon. Now, what does this mean? We're declaring a variable named number1 using the var keyword. The var keyword allows us to infer what the type is going to be. The type is coming from the return value or the return type of int.parse, which is an int. So basically, number1 is going to be an int. Now, int.parse basically takes in a string and parses it into an int. And what's our string? Input1.text. Input1 is our textbook control, text box control, and .text is the property of that text box control. We're getting the value of the property, which is whatever number we decide to put in that .text. So at the end, whatever number our user puts in and types in, we're going to get that for number 1. Now we're going to do the same thing for number 2. Instead of writing number1 equals int.parse input1.text, we're going to write number 2 equals int.parse input2.text. Now we're going to get the sum. Var sum equals number1 plus number 2. Great. Lastly, we're going to write answer.text equals sum.toString. Awesome. Now let's go see if our application works. Let's try first writing 3 plus 5, calculate, we get 8. Let's try 2 and 7, we get 9. Perfect. Now that's all we have today. Please stay tuned for next time where we expand the application and make it better. Thank you again for listening to this episode of Coding with Dom, and don't forget to like and subscribe.